Fine. She's
Standing
good.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. I have to say, this is my second hosting gig because late this afternoon, I hosted what we have for our company, something called Courageous Conversations, and it was about Pride Month, and it was, I have to say, like, it was probably the best hosting thing I ever did. And so I'm hoping some of that fairy dust, landed on me, and this will be a good show. I do want to say something because, we're pretty much know everybody that listens and streams in. It's a small little orbit. And I just wanted to thank everybody that gave me some well wishes over the last few hours. Last night I spent basically the entire night in the ER. Not to go into specifics, but had a medical situation, and it's something that I consider in my head like an old man ailment. So I'm kind of freaking out about that. But I just want to say that, while I was in the hospital, in the room next to me, someone passed away, and the walls are thick, but they ain't that thick. So I heard I heard the LCD go into flatline. I heard the paddles being applied and not working. I heard them call the time. Later I saw the gurney come out with a sheet over, and I just want to say, like, I'm so glad that that I get to do this tonight. I really,
Yeah.
I really do, because it's, I don't know what that person's story was, but it really affected me greatly, and I'm just feeling very, and not that anything I had last night was in any way life. It wasn't that bad. It was. Let's just characterize it as discomfort more than pain, but. It just, it's like when you have exposure to things like that, it just makes you count your blessings. And this show is one of my blessings. So I'm just really happy to be with you guys. So
We're very happy you're here. Just waking up this
Absolutely.
morning to to a text message and those pictures of a hospital band that was not
Yeah.
that was just like I was if I wasn't awake before, I was awake then. I was just like, wait, am I going to Jersey today? What's happening?
I was checking the timestamp too, because I was like, I was just talking with him last night and everything was fine, and then
It was like I said, like at 9 o'clock I started feeling some discomfort. By 10 I would characterize it as pain. By 11:30 it was unbearable. And luckily we have a hospital in town. The reason we don't lose power is because we're on the same grid as the hospital and the police department. And if you ever watch the show House, they've literally built that hospital. It literally is Princeton Plainsboro Medical, whatever the hell going on House. It literally is a counterpart hospital because it services both the towns. It's so strange. But just again, very lucky that, I don't know what people do in rural areas if they have like some kind of trauma and it's like an hour and 10-minute drive. I have no idea how you would, kind of deal with that, because that's something I've never had to deal with in my life, because of the abundance of hospitals in this area, and just like I said, I'm counting blessings tonight. So I'm
well, we're happy that you're here.
So it's gonna take me. What happened with Caleb now? He said he's too emotional. He's got to go. Hopefully we can get him back real quick. But anyway, for tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the new animated movie from what actually is the entity that produced this? Is it Sony Animation?
It's Sony Animation. Yeah, so Sony Animation Studios.
Yeah, I never know what the things are called because it has changed names a few times. Yeah.
But they're operating obviously in association with Marvel, but not Marvel Studios. So it's they're doing their own thing. It's Sony, so they yeah. Oh, we're just.
Do we have Caleb back?
Not yet. Checking. I'm wondering if they're having storms out there.
Well, we had smoke here.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about it because it seems like it's kind of a redo of last year. If you remember, I think Brian was dealing with that up in Seattle with all the.
We had a situation as we had a smaller controlled burn in Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a somewhat familiar name, Jackson, New Jersey, it's where Six Flags Great Adventure is, and they had a controlled burn in the area, and we thought, hey, that's what that is because it was on the news. And then I was, just seeing these posts from people up in North Jersey saying, "What's going on? Like, when did we decide that we moved to Mars?" And
yeah, most of California looked like that last year too. I remember that was a pretty big. Seeing all those pictures of everything orange and red, it is wild. Yeah. And for New York to see that's been, that's not normal. That's not something that people see up there. So.
But it was a situation where, I had gone to see the movie on Tuesday night. It was the first opportunity I had to see it. And when we got out of the theater, it was palpably different from when we came in. And that was, for an animated movie, it's a little long. It's over 2 hours.
It is.
But I was not anticipating that. But today was much better here. Much better.
Yeah, I heard that the weather patterns changed. Not to say that the fires are out. They're still, they're still burning out. Somebody had said something crazy like 15 million acres or something like that.
Yeah, it is something like insane.
It's just wild up in the eastern provinces. I think it's Nova Scotia specifically where it was happening. But that's pretty wild. For everybody in Canada, in the Atlantic provinces, hopefully you're safe and stay inside if you've got the smoke coming your way, because I know the weather patterns are changing and now it's kind of churning in a different area where all that smoke's just settling in there with the high pressures. Oof, scary stuff. It is scary stuff.
Do we have anything from Caleb?
So Caleb is doing a restart right now, so he's restarting his computer. So I'm sure we could kind of here he is. Oh, I hear the beep. I hear the beep.
That Arkansas beep.
Okay.
There we go.
we are relegated to cell phone streaming on this fine evening.
We'll take it.
While I deal with some technical difficulties, our internet just crashed.
Oh no.
So sorry to hear that.
Bill was talking about power outages and the universe just decided to strike.
Which Bill never did. The most extreme example of that was during Hurricane Sandy. You went to the next town over. They were without power for 15 days. We didn't have power for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. All nice and even here.
Just for my own edification, do I sound halfway decent? Can everyone hear me?
You sound fine.
Yeah, okay. You sound fine.
I am trying to reboot my laptop and see if I can do the problem. I apologize.
If you don't get to it, I'm certain that we can deal with the current situation that we have. All right, Steve, you are our resident dude that summarizes the plots for the films. So why don't you get going there on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
Well, so I'll try to keep it quick because, like you said, this is a pretty long movie. It's almost 2.5 hours. It is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse that came out a few years ago by Sony Animation Studios in association with Marvel. Because Sony does have the license, they have the rights to all of the Spider-Man properties, including other non-direct Spider-Man characters and things like that, but specifically anything that is Spider-Man related. And this is a perfect opportunity to show off as many of those Spider-Man properties as possible in Across the Spider-Verse. So in this movie, we're reintroduced not to Miles Morales at first, but to Gwen Stacy. The Gwen Stacy who is Ghost Spider, Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, in her universe, summarizing her place, in this narrative, telling us her story, her origin, what she's dealing with, and of course, the difficulty that she has, being apart from Miles Morales, the main character of Into the Spider-Verse. And in fact, through some interesting situations that happened pretty early on, she's introduced to Jess Drew and Miguel O Hara, two other spider people who are part of a group of many spider people that are working to try and save the multiverse from anomalies that were caused by the Alchemex particle accelerator explosion in the first movie. So she joins them and off she goes. And then we're back to Miles Morales. Well, actually, then we're back to credits, and then Miles Morales again, who's trying to keep things together. He's going into his later years in high school and trying to figure out his future. He's also much better as a Spider-Man. He's taking real control, real action as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and encounters a minor villain, we think, in the Spot. And he makes things a little bit difficult pretty early on, and eventually becomes a lot more powerful as the movie goes along. But Gwen and Miles are brought back together. He follows her into another portal to another universe, and there is introduced to many, many more spider people as he's finding out more about himself, his part in all the anomalies and all of the craziness that's been going on with the multiverse and the Spider-Verse specifically, and how not just how he fits in, but how he can protect himself as things go from bad to worse, unfortunately for him, not just with the Spot, but also with how the other spider people see him and perceive him as part of kind of the reason why there's so many problems. It's a great movie, wonderful, and of course, I will not spoil much because we kind of knew very early on when they were producing this movie that it was too big for just one film, so they split it into two. And so suffice to say, there is a very big cliffhanger at the end of this one that will lead into next year's, I believe, Beyond the Spider-Verse is the next installment. So we have some time to wait for that one, but hopefully not too long because, whoo boy, it ended on a really, really great cliffhanger. So, impressions. What do you guys think? What did you guys think of the movie? I saw it on Sunday and again on Monday, so I have seen it twice. And I could say on the second viewing, you get even more. So I
that was a
recommend
question
seeing
I
it
had
if
for
you
you.
can.
Were there things that kind of flew past you that you didn't catch the first time?
Oh yeah. First time, absolutely. Second time, to look in the corners, look in the background, look at things that maybe aren't front and center. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things I noticed on the second go through when we get into spoilers. But it's definitely one of those things where I cannot wait until it comes out on home video so I can pause. There's gonna be a need for a pause button in this movie, so great for multiple viewings.
Cool. Well, Caleb, please go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I thought this was just pure joy. I remember seeing the first Spider-Man film, and I think it's always dangerous when you compare a sequel or something to the thing that came before it, but one of my reactions watching the first Spider-Verse film was this was the first time it really felt like a comic book came to life. We've seen stop motion comics and things like that, but there was just something different about this. And before this, Marvel, DC has a strong reputation for animated film, but Marvel was kind of hit and miss with animated films. And then they just got everything right with Spider-Verse. And then so I went in with high expectations. And it was just utterly delightful, like just pure joy. Yet again, I had that feeling. It's like, this is what happens in my brain when I read a comic, when I play it, when I play out a comic book, a superhero comic in my head. This is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what it feels like. And they absolutely distilled that. Like you said, there were a ton of Easter eggs in this film, and that was really fun. I love Miguel O Hara. That character is, he's one of those people that I just really, really enjoy reading. And Spider-Man 2099 is such a fun read. So, it was great seeing him. Even if they, they kind of positioned him in the way that they did. Again, we'll talk about that later. He was a good guy, but he was that, almost way too stern good guy. Which fits for that personality, but I was just like, so we're positioning him to be what he is. But other than that, I really think it was great. I love that they went more into Gwen. I think with this film than they have before, just in her personality and her persona, what makes her tick, who she is. But short of that, they really nailed, at least from the aspect of a 35-year-old white dude sitting in Arkansas watching a movie, they nailed like being a kid, right? Like being a teenager. I thought it's, at least from my perspective, as much as I can understand what it means to be a teenager in 2023, I think it was great, man. Just the stuff in the rooms, the bedrooms and things like that, the posters on the wall. I absolutely adored it. And I cannot wait to see it finished. I really, really, really want to see where they go. And the choice of a villain was just chef's kiss.
Yeah, and I think something else, though, I can't, say this with any degree of authority, but I got the feeling that they also nailed what it's like to be a parent in that situation.
Yeah.
Some exquisite dialogue from Rio and Kemp, from Miles' parents. I mean, that was it felt it. And I think you hit on something, Caleb, before, because if you go to the, at least the start of the last decade, DC would consistently put out these made-for-TV, direct-to-video animated movies, which elevated the form.
Yeah.
And Marvel's were, what the hell it's done. That was the feeling you got. And it is nice to see Marvel animation go somewhere with this. Right. Having Gwen's story as the preamble, I thought was incredibly effective. It was like seeing those Rico Rodriguez covers come to life in the palette choice. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Really, like you say, some of this is this feeling of comic books come to life, and you had that there. Not to give away any spoilers right now, but I would kill for a Ben Reilly film with the way that he was characterized in this, because that's a situation where unless you're plugged in, you're just going to see it as something funny. But if you are plugged in, oh boy, was there a lot of nuance there. And when you went to the what did they call it? The in the comic, it's the I forget what it was actually called in the slot. It's a different name, but what was where the headquarters? What was that called?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. What was that called? The just the hub. There was something, because I know they all just kind of.
But it was
very briefly.
When we got to that point, it was just, I mean, the fun level. Even though it's kind of heavy, what's going on with Miles at that point. I mean, just the fun meter just went up and up and up and up and up, and then it was like a mercury where the mercury spouts out of the temperature, out of the thermometer. I mean, it was so much fun. But going back, the having Gwen's story again effectively be the preamble and reflect so precisely what her comic origin is. I just absolutely love it, because for at least 2 years, Spider-Gwen was my favorite comic that was out there. I do think the first arc of the what's known as Most Wanted, the Zero collection, which was a mini series, and then I would say like at least the first 20 or so issues of the ongoing, I just thought that's everything you wanted in a comic. And if you're looking for action, my God, sprinkled in through all of these wonderful character moments and sincere and heartfelt character moments. Even the Spot, there's a lot of pathos there for his situation. He's twisted his shit after a point, but you can understand what brought him to where he was. And that whole nature of being a teenager, feeling you're an outcast, and poor Miles is literally told by person after person, yes, you are an outcast. You weren't supposed to exist.
Yeah.
I think that's a situation no teenager ever wants to hear. And how would you deal with that? And I think what we saw in the film is it shows that he's, if somebody's going to be equipped to deal with hearing that from somebody, he's a pretty good person to throw it at, because he's confident and he's self-aware. But in the same token, though, he has those traits, he's still growing up. And it's just a wonderful character story. And not just him, not just Gwen. There's so much loaded in here. Marvel's animation theatrically has an excellent track record in the best animated feature category for the Oscars, after both Big Hero 6 and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse won this. I can't see anything. If something's gonna like compete with this for that category this year, it's gonna be like this generation's Fantasia. I mean, I can't see anything. If there is a film in that animated category that's even a fraction better than this one is, I'd welcome it, because this was, the whole feeling while you were watching the film was upping the game. And this did that in spades.
Yeah. We just got joined with a few people here. So we have John Westhoff throwing out the horns and a cowboy hat. And in response to your talking about Ben Reilly by Andy Samberg movie. Now, I agree. Yeah, Andy Samberg was hilarious as Ben in this. And we have Wendy Freeman joining us as well.
Hey, Wendy.
Elemental doesn't stand a chance. That's right. Elemental comes out this weekend, I believe. And I mean, it's going to get buried by weekend number 2 of Spider-Verse, because this one beat all expectations.
The Transformers film is getting surprisingly good reviews.
That is also getting good reviews, but I think that one might also be buried, because I think the word of mouth here and people who are just seeing it again are going to be, they're going to push this up to another great week for this, which is good. I mean, I think that this, I agree, Bill, that this is definitely one of the best animated features of this year, if not the best animated feature this year. And we are about halfway through the year, and Pixar and Disney are usually putting out, they're the big competition here. And Elemental, probably not. And I'm not sure what the Disney Princess movie is this year, but I don't. I mean, Little Mermaid, but that's not animated, so
that's live action. Yeah.
I don't know what the animated one is.
Speaking of live action, it also is worth noting we're now 14 days out from the next Marvel live action film.
Yeah.
Doesn't the next one come out in like 3 weeks?
No.
Flash comes out too.
Flash comes out. Okay,
We get
Flash
Flash
comes out
in
3 weeks. Yeah, that's what it is.
in 1 week from tomorrow. So we have Flash in 1 week, but that's DC.
Oh, in 1 week.
The Marvel
so
one
2
got
weeks before I can
pushed.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, the Marvel one got pushed out. That was going to be the Marvels, Captain
That
Marvel
got
2,
pushed
and that's been pushed
to-
out to November.
Okay, so I knew originally that I knew there was something coming up. I just couldn't remember what it was, and
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I
I
knew
think
we
we're
had
going to
live
put
action.
the comic book movies that we have still on the docket this year. I think we still have Blue Beetle. We still have
Blue Beetle.
the Turtles animated film. We still have, as you mentioned, the Marvels, and we still have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
That's
The
correct. That's going to
Turtles-
finish the year.
The
Yeah, the
Turtles
Turtles
animated
one.
film looks so much fun.
It looks like a lot of fun,
Yeah.
but is it going to be more fun than this? I right now I'm going to say I doubt it.
Yeah.
And we do have a few more people joining us. We've got James Figueredo.
Hey, James.
Against some Bears.
Hey there.
James. Little heart here from Wendy. So James said Bill's nickname this evening is awesome. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but Mr. William Trump indicted on 7 counts, Zenowitz. Yes, it has been a very interesting day. And James also brings up the second big news story today. And alternative would be William Pat Robertson is dead, Zanowitz. Never said anything bad about the dead. He's dead. That's good. Or what's the acronym that I've seen a lot posted today? PRIDE. Pat Robertson is dead, everyone. Happy Pride. I'm not going to get into that too much, but we're a comic book podcast. So let's talk more about. Do we want to get into spoilers? Because there's some good.
I think we're fine with spoilers, but I also think we have a frozen Caleb.
Oh no! But Caleb's frozen
tickling
very
with
well.
I'm tickling his nose with my mouse on my computer, and it's not working. So
that is a great.
Again.
I need you to capture that screen and blow it up and just make it the background for this episode.
I'm there with because I'm an old man according to medical science. So I do use a mouse. I can't function without. There we go. Third time lucky, brother.
It was a great frozen screen though. It looked so good.
It was a little unflattering, and
it was not. It was adorable.
It was you're right. We'll go back. You watch this on YouTube, and you'll tell me if you thought it was. I thought it was a tiny bit unflattering. Just anyway. So while you were frozen, I was tickling your nose with my mouse with the cursor, and it wasn't working. So you definitely were frozen. Yeah.
Oh.
I asked for one night of talking with friends, and I can't even goddamn get that.
Well, anyway, Caleb, you just came in where Steve said he wanted to talk about spoilers, so I think we should go. Yeah,
let's spoil the hell out of this, and I'm gonna do that by bringing up a couple posters here. This is the main one for the U.S. that you probably have seen around, and it has a couple images of some spider people in the background. But I like this image a lot better because there's a lot of the spider people that feature in this particular film. Most of the main ones are front and center. So you see here.
There's Julia Carpenter. I didn't notice her before.
Yes, Julia. She is in there. This is again one of the reasons why you want to see it twice, because that's where you notice a lot of the the little subtle ones, the background spider people. You've got the Spectacular Spider-Man animated Spider-Man, the one that looks kind of weirdly short and strangely proportioned in the bottom right.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Spider-Man India or Spider India, who is going to be having a mini series that comes out, I think later this month or next month, played by Karan Soni, who you may recognize from his voice, at least, from other Marvel movies, including Deadpool 1 and 2. He is Karan Soni. He's one of my favorite comedians. I love him. You, of course, have Spider-Gwen, Spider-Woman, Ghost Spider, whichever way you want to call her. And then directly behind her, you have Spider-Punk, Obi, who features very strongly in this episode, and I think is one of the great sort of great standout characters. Even though he doesn't have a lot of screen time, I think what he adds to this film is extremely important. Just sort of his question authority, just poking at the loose threads.
He's a catalyst for key action. So
absolutely huge catalyst. And just in those little subtle moments in his little, what he's doing in the background and little things that he kind of throws out that you might miss, given that focus is usually elsewhere. I think he's such a great quick influence on Miles that kind of fits in with what his parents have been telling him too throughout the movie. Just that, don't just take what people tell you are or what you should be and what you should do. Like, that more than anybody else. And that's what Hobie has been basically telling him, and what Gwen struggles with throughout most of the movie. And there's a lot of personal, like, again, this is whereas the first movie was really, really focused very strongly on Miles and his relationship with Peter Parker and Gwen, this one focuses a lot on Miles, but also focuses a lot on Gwen, their relationship with each other, but also Gwen's relationship with herself, her identity, her place, not just in the Spider-Verse, but also in her own part of New York, her own world. And there's a lot of emotional resonance that happens when these characters are front and center and kind of confronted with an inescapable emotional personal situation. With action, they know how to act. They get out there, they save people, they just go and just do, they act without really thinking too much, although there was some great strategizing. But with Miles, he is so sure of himself in so many moments, except of course when he's dealing with his parents, and then I think they help him out a lot, whereas Gwen, she feels really lonely in a lot of the scenes where she's trying to fit in with the rest of Spider People, but it's when it's in those quiet moments where it's just her and you hear her inner monologue, or her and her father, like those are the moments that really just punch you in the face emotionally, that brought a tear to my eye very early on. Like, I mean, the first 15-20 minutes of the movie is Gwen. So I just I really love these characters, and Miguel O Hara doesn't have a lot of time in this, but I think he pretty much fits the bill of the main villain in this particular installment. Yes, the Spot's kind of, he's a goof at the beginning, and he's kind of like the big bad eventually.
Well, he's a force of nature, right? Like he is this, but as Bill said earlier, they did the really good Marvel thing with him. Something that Marvel is good about in its cinematic universe, and they did it last time too with the Prowler being his uncle. That they do humanize them, and they show you here's how a good person can get brought up to the brink and get led to do bad things. Said another way, here's how a good kid can get radicalized, on the internet or something else. Like I think that's a good metaphor for that. These are good people who get sent down to a bad path, and they really do rope it in with that. And we've mentioned a few times how the aspect of parenthood plays in this, where you have Miles, who has something that's really cool in a post George Floyd world, in a post Black Lives Matter world, in a world where ACAB is a thing and defunding the police is a thing. For him to have he's an Afro Latina or Latino person, and his father's a cop in New York. So he has an authoritative background, and we also get we get Pete being a father in this. We get Jessica Drew, who I loved Jessica Drew in this film. To me,
Issa Rae
was the standout character. Like I latched on to her initially and just never let go. And in this movie, she's pregnant, right? Like, so she's on this burgeon of motherhood, and she's still heroic. Like, she's still doing all of these really cool things and doing it very, very well. We have Aunt May show up. We have, we see some of just the family dynamics from a number of different Spider people. And I think that plays such an important part into who these people are and what it means for them. And from a queer perspective, like, I think we all, on some level, we've been there either in high school or in our early years, where from the outside, we are confident. Like if we're we're in our zone, we have everything together, except when we're around those people, like our family members, who we just don't know how to be ourselves around, who we're out of our element.
That's interesting because I also felt that when I was first coming out.
Yeah, that's
among other gay people. I definitely and that, if anything, there's still threads of that occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting you said that, because I don't think it's reserved to to
the heteronormative side of coming out.
Well,
yeah,
no, a pre-coming out perspective, but it does seem to be something when you are trying to find your tribe within the tribe,
right?
That there is some artifice and finding a place where you can totally be comfortable. This is really interesting because we did talk a lot about identity on the panel that I moderated today for work, and we had 2 trans employees, and their perspective was just fascinating. And some of the things that they're going through right now because of the political climate, they have turned down certain engagements because of where the engagement is, and apart from the sheer wrongness of that, their own awareness of that issue was just fascinating to hear that stuff. But it's interesting, like I said, you said that, Caleb, because I don't think it's necessarily reserved for the pre-coming out period of your life.
No, and to that point, I mean, I think like you can go on this overall queer perspective, or you can narrow it in to the bear perspective, or think when we don't fit into the niche body type of whatever. I said for years that just my personality and who I am, I love motorcycles, sports, stuff like that. I'm too gay to fit into straight world, too straight to fit into gay world, and it took a long time for me to find the tribe. Like I love the way you put that, the tribe within the tribe. Just people who are allowing you the ability to explore your own personalities and the fluidity of what it means to be human, instead of meeting some type of stereotype or stereotype within a stereotype. They allow you, you don't have to abandon everything about the person you were before you were coming out, or adapt your personality to meet somebody else's comfort level. You just get to be you. And that's so difficult initially. And people, I still struggle with it in some arenas, you know what I mean? So I think that they really use this great metaphor of identity with him, with all of these characters, even Miguel O Hara, to really drive home what the struggle is like. And, and to loop it back into kind of where this conversation started, to show Miguel being a hero who is trying to do the wrong thing for the right reason, or maybe it's the right thing, but following the wrong pathway to get there, and inevitably just becomes a monster in and of himself, to an extent. And I think you can do that. That we've certainly seen that other members of the tribe do that. So I thought it was great.
And not to give away a big spoiler, I think we do see the tribe within a tribe at the end.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's so funny because I was reading an article today talking about some of the trans viewers who have watched this film and sort of see a metaphor for trans coming out with Gwen. Because of the colors, I think that's a lot, and also just her personality and certain struggles and certain depictions of Gwen here. I mean, Gwen is not generally canonically a trans girl character. She's not a trans woman, but just as anyone can kind of see a very similar approach to coming out that Miles has with his mom. There are moments in there where I know Rio is thinking, like, if I were in Rio's head, Rio's like, oh my God, Miho is going to tell me he's gay. Like, it's, there's those moments there where he's like, Mom, I've got something really serious. Or like, he opens it. You just tell, like, she's thinking, okay, this is where he tells me he likes boys, and he doesn't. And then of course at the end when when he's telling his mom, like, I'm Spider-Man, and the way she reacts is like, okay, like, it's very, very close to probably a lot of people's experiences in coming out to their families.
Steve, one
But-
note
But
about
also, I think something. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Caleb, but I also think it's important to show that coming out doesn't necessarily mean you're coming out as queer.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
And-
Exactly.
There's a lot of alignment with the struggles I think that everybody has when they reveal something about themselves that is the core of themselves.
Mhm.
And, you know, is it that far from somebody from a wealthy family saying, I want to join a rock band and tour this summer? You know, stakes aren't as high, you know, let's
Yeah.
face it, but it is a coming out process. And I think that having a vehicle like this film might lead to some better understanding about certain things for certain people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little
just
coming
wanted to-
outs and the big coming outs for sure. This kind of gauges.
I just wanted to point out one thing on the topic of Gwen and the connection to trans identity and stuff like that. If you are watching pretty closely when showing her room, she has a protect trans kids flag hanging above her door.
Yeah.
So like I think that like there is something that I'm not saying that she's trans. I mean, I totally support that if they ever come out to a world and they say, hey, no, Gwen, this version of Gwen is a trans character. Awesome. Again, in a multiversal world where we can have any version of these characters, cool. Let's see what this version does. But you know, there is a I nudged elbow my husband in the middle of it. I was like, did you see that? He was like, no. I was like, there was a protect trans kids flag in a major motion Marvel picture, and like that's awesome.
The sentiment here and the clear stance of the idea of identity and understanding your tribe, finding your tribe. I mean, this is like the tribe within a tribe is perfect here. I'm going to keep using that because you guys said it just so well. Here's Miles. He thinks he's found his tribe. There's thousands of other Spider-Men and women and etc. Spider people,
and effectively each of those have no one to talk to.
Right.
Exactly.
And they're in figuratively and literally is their universe.
Yeah.
And
but they
to
within
find
that
to find rejection or restriction,
yeah,
that cannot be easy to deal with.
No, and there's a great quiet moment with Gwen and Miles where they're sitting in a beautifully done. I mean, the art direction in this movie is insane. They did it in the first one, making it very painterly, comic booky, but here by taking all the styles of the different Spider-Man, versions and changing them and just putting them in, so Spider-Punk looks like a collage. Yeah. Whenever he shows up on screen, it's just beautiful, sort of like Punk. Photocopy Xerox
DIY
posters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just that's the way he appears. That's the way he looks on screen, color wise, and just like the lines. But there's a moment between Gwen and Miles where they're sitting upside down under the I think it was the Bushwick Bank building or something, or the Williamsburg Bank building, and she turns to him. She says, "There's nobody else I can talk to about this. Nobody else who understands like you do." And it's such a great moment because it's true. Like these are two people, even in a vast multiverse of spider people, that have just the sentiment, this kind of connection that they may not have with all the other ones, except for, at the end, the tribe within a tribe, who I absolutely agree with. I love who joins that group. I just love it. So, but was there anybody that you wanted to see in this movie, a version of one of the Spider people that you didn't get to see?
The classic Jessica Drew.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see her. The one I was ecstatic to see was the Spider-Man Unlimited from the 1999 animated series. I was ecstatic to see that because that show is 1999 to the hilt. If you've ever watched it, it's basically conceived to sell toys. It is a crassness about it, yet that there is this overarching sincerity about it. I absolutely love the 13 episodes of that series, and it's on Disney Plus if you want to see it. That was my favorite inclusion. And there were things like the Ditko Spider-Man swinging by, and of course there were some other things, and, some of the live action elements sprinkled in. The one I would absolutely love to see, and if they could just get away with this, is Spider Boy from the Amalgam universe. That was the
That'd
one.
be cool.
Maybe they'd be cheeky enough to sneak that in.
Maybe they
So-
did.
Maybe they
Good on
did.
video.
Yeah, it would be in there.
Well, two of the characters that I really wanted to, and I think you got glimpses of them, but they weren't featured prominently. I was hoping to see a return of Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Ham.
Yeah.
And I think we got a little Spider-Ham in one
At
of the
the end.
moments. Yeah,
Yep, at the
where
end.
we also
Yeah.
got the anime Spider-Man version, but again, those characters played pretty big roles in the first film, so I got that, and they needed to make room for more of these other characters, so it was still cool to see them, but I would have liked to have seen more Spider-Ham at least.
Yeah. I just I think I saw pretty much everybody that I wanted to see. I'm trying to think. There's one
Spider Rex. I love seeing
Spider. Yeah, there's. I mean, just everybody in there. Like, I mean, the fact that Ben Reilly was in there and had some of those ridiculous, very '90s moments that just encapsulated, what constituted sort of like self-reflective dialogue in mid-90s extreme kind of books. Man, I think I loved all of this. I loved everything. I don't think I was very disappointed. Jessica Drew would have been nice to see the, kind of like the 616 Jessica Drew, but Jess Drew was great with Issa Rae as the voice. I love Issa Rae. So,
and sometimes it was also the costumes. Like I would have loved to have seen the white FF Spidey costume.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Things like that, where not necessarily the characters, but just some reference to and I'm like, as we're saying this, I'm like looking and seeing.
Well, there's the
paper bag. Like
there's the paper bag. I forget what Forbush. It was not Forbush Man.
No, it's not Forbush Man. This is the one where he had lost the
he lost his costume.
Yeah,
and he was in the Baxter building, and he took one of Johnny's costumes and put a bag over his head.
Yeah, put a bag over his head. He was like Bag Spider-Man or something. Paper Bag Spider-Man.
I'm
surprised there wasn't the 6-arm Spider-Man. Not Doppelganger, because I think Doppelganger showed up very briefly, but
run,
the Morbius run of Spider-Man. I'm surprised that there wasn't that sort of like 6-armed, but not hideous and bitey Spider-Man. So, but no, I think this was excellent. And I can't wait to see it again.
I wanted Spider Hulk. I didn't see Spider Hulk.
No, they had Cyborg Spider-Man looking extra Hulky-ish, but
did they have the 1602 Spider-Man?
They did not. I did not see 1602 Spider-Man.
He might be there though. He might be there.
It's funny that Miles
Spider-Man.
Miles
after you watch it like the 18th time, maybe you'll catch it.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, will he be in there? Probably, maybe. I see one that looks like Pancho Villa for some reason.
I did hear a rumor that the only non-Spider-Man animated characters that do make an appearance somewhere in the background, and this makes perfect sense, are Firestar, Iceman, and Miss Lion.
That's awesome. I didn't see them.
I did not. That may just be like internet chatter, and I think Sony is they're very they know what they have a hold of and what they don't, so I'd be very interested. I'd be almost surprised to see if they did that, but as something cheeky, that would be interesting. And like you said, once this comes onto home video or streaming that you can own, there's going to be a lot of freeze framing in those crowd scenes.
If Firestar is in there, doesn't that make her the first X-Man in the Marvel? Because I mean, we had glimpses of live action Marvel in this. Doesn't that make her the first? I mean, I know we established Kamala Khan as a mutant in the show, but if Firestar's in this, doesn't that make her the first canonical mutant / X-Man in Marvel?
I don't think so, because first of all, Iceman comes first in terms of when they appeared.
Right, but no, that's what I'm saying. But Iceman
yeah,
hasn't
I
shown up in the
don't
cinematic
necessarily, because I also don't know how much this ties into MCU. You know, they've made some.
I mean,
through
they made
they
made a reference.
Made some references. So yeah.
Doctor Strange. That's a weird name. Maybe you should be practicing medicine. Yeah.
So
I mean, this film, a really boring rhino.
Yeah. Really boring rhino.
A really a really exciting. What was it? A really exciting something, and then a really boring rhino. But then the Prowler.
The Prowler. Oh, that's something you shouldn't spoil for people. That should be.
Well, I'm just saying the Prowler that they had, captured, who was Donald Glover.
Why did you do that? I just said not to spoil that for people.
No. I thought you were talking about the other Prowler issue.
No. That's the one I meant.
Anyway. Oh, okay.
Okay. It's okay.
Anyways. But yeah, spoilers, by the way, people. We're going to mention spoilers.
So anyway, go see it.
Go see it. Go see it. Go see it twice.
Yeah. This is a very enthusiastic thumbs up from all of us. Yeah. All right. Well, we have a bit of a tradition on our show. It's become a tradition that when we talk about a film, since we are a comic book podcast, we will bring up something from the annals of comic books that the properties are based on that we recommend to people who are watching or listening that we think you may enjoy if you enjoyed this particular film. And with this particular property, we had this one was pretty wide reaching. You know, the amount of material that you could pick from. So, Steve, let's start with you. What's a comic book or a graphic novel collection, however you want to characterize it, that you would recommend based on characters in this film?
David Cezanne has, by the way, popped in. Hello, boys. Hey, David. So the book that I picked was Spider-Man 2099, which, when released in 1992, I did take it out of its plastic. So yes, please gasp.
But look at you with the gimmick cover.
Gimmick cover. Shiny foil. But they did this with all of the 2099 number ones. They had Ravage and Doom and
Punisher,
Ghost Rider and
Punisher,
the other Punisher and all the it's which I think I have all of them.
Yeah,
whatever. But this one I think was the one that I really loved. It's a very interesting introduction. You don't really get a lot going on in this comic. You are introduced to Miguel O Hara as the Spider-Man 2099, and very quickly, in setting this universe being in the future where everybody's using interesting slang and flying around and visiting Doc in a Box if they get hurt or whatever. He comes off as a very different type of Spider-Man, and through a flashback, with the help of his virtual assistant Lila, who is very different than the Lila in the movie. By the way, I will tell you this: she is more of like a 1940s Hollywood vixen type in the comic. But you find out that he works for Alchemax. Again, plays very heavily in the movies. Where he is a researcher that's trying to combine animal DNA with human DNA to enhance humanity. That's kind of his idea, is that he wants to push humanity to the next evolution, because I guess they forgot that mutants exist or something. But unfortunately, his he works for an evil corporation, and he decides, after a really horrible experiment gone wrong on a convict, that he's going to quit. And his boss is like, you're not going to quit. I'm going to drug you and get you addicted to a horrible hallucinogen that will force you to work for us for the rest of your life if you ever want to, get this drug again. Unfortunately, he tries very unsuccessfully to rid himself of the effects of this evil drug, this addiction, by doing exactly what all scientist heroes do in all comic history: zap themselves with their own experiments. But in this case, there is an extra twist in that one of the other lab assistants basically is like, oh, I'm going to show that, Dr. O'Hara that, I'm just going to ruin his experiment, blah, 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 by turning the power up to 1 million. And basically zaps him he's still human, sort of, except now he is a spider vampire, and that's where they leave it. This was written by Peter David. Dialogue is very Peter David. It's great. And
but
it was
it's also
drawn...
a little bit different because when you think at the within the at the same time or surrounding it or preceding this, Peter David had these amazing emotional runs on the Incredible Hulk and also on Aquaman at the time as well, which basically
X Factor.
Yeah. So so this was like a very different kind of. I mean, it's almost as if he was working in that for lack of a better word, image kind of mentality.
Yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely his dialogue, but it's not plot structure. We'll put it that way.
Had he written Supergirl yet?
What?
Had he written Supergirl yet at this time?
Oh no,
that came later, right?
No.
But not that far off.
Yeah,
not that far.
I think he was. We're talking like 94, maybe 95 for
yeah.
Supergirl, right?
There's a mini series of Supergirl, and then I think after that is when the Matrix Danvers. Right. So I want to say like 95 or 6.
Yeah, I've got them
Matrix
all. I just couldn't remember when.
Yeah. With Aussie Ginger Daddy Lex Luthor, yes. But yeah, I mean, with this, I actually would say that it's Peter David channeling, more, I would say, classic 70s, maybe Silver Age style.
Yeah, there is a sort of Bronze Age kind of.
Yeah, it's very. I like it. Like what's happening.
It's like these are villains and these are heroes. Yeah.
Yep. And similar to kind of like a Morbius situation, that's where we find Miguel O Hara in Spider-Man 2099. He's kind of like a mashup of Spider-Man and Morbius, really. He's a kind of a living vampire, but he's also a spider hero. And it's very interesting. It's a great way to start this. And James has just reminded us that Spider-Man 29 Omnibus has just come out. So if you want to catch up on the
omnibus word.
Omnibus.
Those are books for rich people.
Yes. Or Marvel Unlimited if you're like us plebs. But yeah, you could catch up on the entire saga of Miguel O Hara. I would recommend it. It's very interesting, very unique in the canon of Spider People books. But I think it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. Now back in the protective plastic it goes.
Okay. And Caleb, I did dig your momentary Batman villain until today.
Yeah. See you there. The ship is sinking, yes. Guys.
The Omnibussy.
That would be a good villain. The Omnibussy.
I don't know if we can use Bussy without getting flagged.
Everything, yeah. Who knows? I don't know anymore. All right, Caleb, tell us about a book that you would recommend. And I think this also is one that has one of the two principal characters.
It is. So Steve actually stole the book I was going to do. I was totally geared up to do 2099 because I love Miguel O Hara. Since he stole it, I'm taking a point of personal privilege. I'm cheating. I'm going to throw in 2 books, but it's going to be real fast. I promise. The first one, I'm not even going to talk about it. The only reason I'm going to mention it, it's because it's my favorite Miles Morales moment that I've read yet. I mean, it's going to happen someday. They're going to up it, and it's going to be great. But this moment actually comes in Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars number 9. Jonathan Hickman and Assad Ribick's Secret Wars number 9. It's at the very end. The convergence is over. They've fixed everything, and we've now got Earth Prime. And on Earth Prime, you had Spider-Man from 616, and then you had Miles from 1610. You don't know what's happened. And then they just show you this moment where they're both on a rooftop and Peter Parker's like, Miles, what did you tell your parents? And he said, told him I'm studying with some friends. He's like, oh, good. You didn't lie completely then. I'm teaching you. So it's okay. You ready to go fight some bad guys? And then he just says, oh, hell yeah. They swing off into Manhattan. I love that moment. It's the first time we saw 616 Pete and him together like that. It was such a powerful moment for that legacy character. It still stands out to me to be one of my favorite things. It's such an incredible feeling. I remember seeing that for the first time. But The book I want to talk about, like in a more in-depth way, is actually a book that, it didn't dawn on me originally when we're like, hey, I need to talk about a Miles book or a Spider-Man book. I started thinking about what I could do. And I really was like, well, what has he been in lately? I say lately, but, in the past several years that I just really was my favorite thing. And this book right here, Champions from 2016, really does encapsulate some of my favorite things about superhero comics. It's, some of my favorite books are the Young Avengers. I love team books. I love getting the team together books. And so this really just I was like, oh, I got to talk about Champions because it's got Miles. And it's, it brings in some really, really great character moments from these folks that we get to see it from doing teamwork together. So this has happened right after, as kids, Nova, Kamala, and Miles joined the Avengers for a little bit. And then Nova and Miles quit. They were just like, nope, we're not doing it. This, like, all of these people, it's post Civil War II. And so, heroes fighting heroes just really pissed off these characters. And they were like, you're not helping, clean up. You come in here and you wreck shop to quote unquote save people, but then you leave, train rails and stuff are just broken. People can't get to work. They, their food, somebody's food truck got destroyed. What was his livelihood? And you're not going to fix that, right? Like those people just have to fend for themselves. It really is this, almost damage control moment. Like, what happens when the heroes go away and the poor people are left to scoop up the rubble? And that bothered at least Nova and Miles to a point that they quit the Avengers. But, Miss Marvel's still kicking it, at least for a little bit. But even she has finally had enough. And she too quit. But that doesn't mean she's going to quit being a hero. And so she has one of her really, bright ideas, as she is wont to have. And she calls up Sam and she calls up Miles and it's like, hey, just give me 5 minutes. Meet me on the rooftop. I need to talk to you guys. Well, Sam's actually living in Arizona, so he has to like rocket blast across the continental U.S. To get back to where he's going. And she meets him on the roof and was like, hey, like, we're not done being heroes. And they're like, no, we're not joining the Avengers. She's like, I'm not either. I quit. And they're like, wait, you? And yeah. So she dropped out. And they're like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, we need to put a team together. So they start going through and they pull together some of the people that you saw from that initial cover. They pull together Viv Vision. They get Amadeus Cho, who at the time was Hulk powered, totally awesome Hulk. And eventually they rope in the young, at least Cyclops from the young X-Men from the Bendis era, to get to be a part of this team. But he's not actually, despite the fact that he's on the forefront, not actually in this issue. I think he comes in issue 2, if I remember correctly. But they're going to be a team. They're going to do things in this kind of very much a young Avengers fashion, because the world still needs champions. So they get Viv Vision together because she has access to all things internet. She taps in and they're like, hey, what's our first move? And she's like, oh, there's a boat and somebody's like low key calling for help out of it. Their phone just died. Sounds like human trafficking. So let's go jump in and stop that. And they do. And they get to this point to where they are rescuing the people. But one of the young women who was trapped inside a Connex that was being put onto a ship didn't make it. And the villain, who is this kind of clown-esque figure, I've never really seen him again. I don't even know if he actually gets a name in the book. The Hulk, Amadeus Cho, starts just wailing on him and just is ready to kill him. But Spider-Man and Miss Marvel stop him. They come in and say, no, like, justice needs to be done, but not this way. We're not that. We're gonna see this guy behind bars. He's gonna pay for his crimes, and we're gonna do it. And we're gonna be the avenue to set it up. And we're also going to help get these people back home. We're gonna clean up the mess, and we're gonna do what heroes should do. And thus begins the Champions. And really cool meta moment. They, because these are kids, they were all using social media, and so there's a hashtag Champions thing.
That was something I wanted to mention because they know full well this is something the Avengers, being the old guys, will never come close in terms of their expertise. There was some really cute moments in the first 2 or 3 issues with that.
What was great is, Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos, or who the art, the creative team on this. What was great is they knew the meta power of this, and they actually in real life started a champions hashtag campaign, and you could tweet or you could do whatever using that hashtag, and it would end up in the letters column. I actually got a letter in the back of a champions book by doing that. That's my comic book claim to fame, is I'm in a champions book for a tweet that I did that was done by that champions hashtag, and it was just brilliant use of showing these teen heroes who they are and changing the old guard and taking a holistic look at being a hero, and something that we see now in modern social movements, saying, no, it's not enough to just make the changes at the top end. We've really got to take care of people, which drives home who Miles is. His family dynamic, where he comes from. He is a salt of the earth kid from New York. I forget which borough he is. Is he Manhattan?
Brooklyn.
He's Brooklyn. Okay, Brooklyn. Gotcha. This kid from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn is fuck, actually.
Yeah.
Princeton? That's all the way in New Jersey. It's so far away.
Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about that movie, as somebody who's one of my best friends growing up in high school was Lisa Molina. When Rio reacts to him getting a B+ in Spanish, that was the most realistic thing I've ever seen on film.
Yep.
100%.
100%. Okay.
But yeah, that's the book. The book is worth going back and rereading. I just want to say, I mentioned Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos. The Humberto Ramos book, he was made to draw these kind of characters, right? Like, he was made to draw this. He was made to draw Strange Academies. Like, he does so good with these young, dynamic folks all up in this. It's fantastic. Victor Alazaba inked it. Edgar Delgado was a colorist. Clayton Cowles, who letters everything, also lettered this book. Super fun. Also really cool going back and seeing the ads for books that were coming out at this time, and just other things. That was neat to see as well. But go back and read this. I love Champions. Great example of who Miles is in a team setting.
Nice. Okay, for my book, I'm going to deal with, I would say, the other co-lead of the film, and that's Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy of Earth 65. So, Steve, if you can put up the graphic, this is a book I highly recommend to everybody. And in some ways, you've seen a lot of what's happened in this book. This collects the first Spider-Gwen miniseries and also her first appearance in Edge of Spider-Verse #2, which is the only Spider-Gwen solo appearance that I don't have the original issue for. Because I thought, I'll get it. I'll get most of Spider-Verse in there, and now it's a fortune. Even the reprint on Spider-Gwen #0 is worth about $50.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. But you've seen some of the action in here. Basically, the first 15-20 minutes of the Spider-Verse film is her story that's basically covered in Most Wanted. And Most Wanted is her literally. She is wanted by the police for the murder of her friend Peter Parker. One thing I liked about the film and I liked about this story is you don't get the origin from the door opening.
Yeah.
Things are already in motion. She's already been bitten by the spider. Peter is already, in effect, jealous of her because she has these abilities, and he injects the lizard DNA into himself to become like her, which leads to his death. But that's already happened effectively in the past tense. You see the building blocks of her world. Again, the characters that you're familiar with in 616 are very different. Very different Matt Murdock. Very different Frank Castle. Those characters, as time goes on, there's a lot more complication and a lot more nuance to their motivations, but it's fascinating to see that. She in the film, you see that she's a drummer in the Mary Janes, and that band exists here too. And again, it's a lot of the female characters from Spider-Man's canon, but the teenage versions that are also musicians. So you have Gloria Grant and Betty Brant, and naturally MJ as part of that group. You see what the landscape in Earth 65 is like in terms of the criminal element and the New York police system. a tremendous amount of world building that happens within these 6 issues that have big ramifications later on as her story progresses. And it reads beautifully. As somebody who I can say reread this afternoon. And as you can see here, just the color palette that's used, both from, I think, Jordi Belair in the interiors, but the colors that are on covers are Rodriguez himself. Jason Latour, has just a wonderful female voice employed through this. One thing where you're talking about the trans appeal of this version of Gwen Stacy, there's also a very very distinct feminist appeal of this version of Gwen Stacy. And I just absolutely loved the first 2 years of this series, and kind of trails off a little bit. They, maybe should have timed out a little bit earlier than issue 37, but as the start of something special, I don't think you can beat this. That's Most Wanted. This is the Zero. And thank you, James. I do think Spider-Gwen's design is phenomenal. And that's one thing I think a lot of these Spider-Man variations, Miguel O Hara, that costume is exquisite. It's an exquisite design. I think you do have that, almost kind of across the board for these Spider-Man variants, for lack of a better term, which does have more resonance in the MCU than it does right here. But anyway, so Spider-Gwen Volume 0, Most Wanted. Read that.
Awesome. I agree. I've been following Spider-Gwen since she got her own series. I obviously missed just Spider-Verse number 2 because I wasn't reading
everybody missed
Spider-Man. Everybody missed it, which is why it's worth so much. But I hopped really on to Spider-Gwen very early on as well. And what's interesting, sitting in that theater in North Carolina, where essentially two of the co-creators, or two of the creative team behind Spider-Gwen reside. I just thought that was really kind of cool. And I wondered how many people around me knew that.
Well, even more though. I mean, I think there's a lot of other people that are in that area, like Rico Renzi.
Yeah, well, Rico is one of the creative team as well. So
yeah.
He did colors for a long time.
It's a very North Carolina.
Yeah, well, Jason Latour is very North Carolina. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah. But I think it's just very cool seeing it in North Carolina and seeing this character on screen. It's like, this is a very major character that's local, strangely enough. Yeah.
All right, fellas, we got what I see here is 17 minutes left to kind of cover something. So I think there's one news item we should cover very briefly. We each have a book to cover very briefly, and the wrap up. So let's get going. Steve, why don't you tell us about the news?
So we got, like you said, there was one news item. We could go really, really quickly through two of the other ones. So DC just yesterday won a. Okay. Well,
DC won a lawsuit.
They won a lawsuit. Ultimate Universe is coming back.
We're good. Okay.
Yeah.
But talk about Image and Lunar.
So how everybody's been jumping off of Diamond's boat. Image was the last one that was a major publisher was hanging on. Well, Image has decided that they are going to go with Lunar now. So Lunar is very much sitting pretty with both DC exclusivity as well as now Image exclusivity. Obviously, there's a lot of other publishers that are with Lunar, AWA, Mad Cave, Scout, CEX. But having two of the big three, so to speak, being with Lunar now that's a major blow to
with the way things are structured now, I would be remiss to not include Dark Horse in the top four. And Dark Horse is already Dark Horse has already bailed over to Random House.
Exactly. So you have, I mean, in terms of what previews has been for the past couple of years, it has been basically like a giant section of Image and then everybody else. Well, that giant section of Image now is now
gone
to Lunar. Now, again, Diamond is going to continue distributing these comics for these publishers. People can still order through Diamond if they'd like to, but
but they're paying,
Lunar, of course,
paying a lot more.
Paying more.
Shops are going to pay a lot. Like, why would they do? I mean, it makes no fiscal sense.
Exactly.
What loyalty?
This
So,
is Image.
yeah,
Yeah,
just going.
yeah.
I do think it's important to point out one thing though. Image Diamond is still distributing Image to the bookstores. That was one
Yep.
piece of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So there is an aspect of Diamond that is still distributing, but just not to comic shops. And the only thing is, I'm fascinated by this stuff because I love the inner workings of the comic industry. But it set me up to make a really good joke that somebody at Boundless Comics was like, "It's our time."
Yeah. Oh,
Boundless,
but yeah.
Boundless, and Avatar Press are now the flagships of Diamond.
we get the giant 40-page focus spread with preview pages and whole page write-ups.
Get your
yeah.
$5 trades.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean that's pretty big news.
It's very big news. Yeah.
For the world of
The
direct
death of
marketing.
Diamond, I don't know, but it's
No, I think it's back to where probably it should have been for the past 25 years, which is competition.
It's not, there's no monopoly anymore.
Before Diamond, there was like 15 different distributors, and they just kind of get gobbled up or absorbed, and
and then you had
Diamond.
Then you had the strange exclusivity period with Heroes World, and
is what it is there. But I think that's a very big change. So, do you want to go real quick into?
Yeah, we each have a book to talk about, so let's talk about it. Steve, why don't you start with what you got?
Awesome. Supermassive 2023. Last year, they did a Supermassive crossover, which of course is the new ish. I mean, they've been going on for a couple of years now with Radiant Black, Radiant Pink, Inferno Girl Red, Rogue Sun, and Dead Lucky. Are all part of the same sort of universe within Image Comics. And this is the latest crossover. It's just a big mega mashup of all the main characters. Where they are now, if you haven't been reading them, there's a lot going on here. So I do recommend kind of going back and at least reading some of the more recent issues before picking this one up, or else you might be a little bit lost with where the characters are. They do a little bit of explaining, but not so much. But an interesting thing, too, is that they also provide the origin of a particular character's powers, and that is Inferno Girl Red. Her, I'd say, like, I don't know, 500,000th ancestor. You find out who that is here in this book, where the origins of the powers weren't really well known in her miniseries. But I think it's really cool. There is a very interesting last page cameo from a certain Image character that I wouldn't have thought was part of this universe. But if you want to find out who that is, go and pick that up. It's Image Comics, written by Kyle Higgins, Ryan Parrott, Melissa Flores, Matt Groom, who are all writers on their own respective books, with all art by Daniela De Nicolo, Walter Biamonte on color, and Becca Carey on letters.
Okay, cool. Caleb, you think your mute is on?
It was. I really enjoyed Higgins on Ultraman, and he really does have a love for this like Super Sentai based stuff. So if you're into that, it's not my cup of tea. I read all his Ultraman stuff, but if you love that, then I think Higgins is your guy.
Absolutely.
Nice.
It does sort of like Sentai or mech kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Caleb, you have a really interesting book, and it's a name that I'm basically familiar with from law school questions. So,
yeah. So I got in my hands a new graphic novel, newish. It's called Centralia. It is written by Mio van de Piet. I think is how you pronounce it. Forgive me if I mispronounce that. It is the reason Bill mentions that that it's a law school name that he knows of. Centralia is actually a town in Pennsylvania. It used to be a mining town, and the mines caught fire one day, and it is basically still burning. It's a hellmouth underneath the ground, and that is still. But it's caused all kinds of legal issues, and there are some fascinating legal cases wrapped around it. And it blows my mind. Like I said, this thing is still burning today. Like concrete is melted. You still can't get close enough. It's a literal hellmouth on Earth. This story is very, 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 very loosely based on that. You start seeing some notes of it. this story is, if I had to describe it, which I have to because I'm on a podcast where I describe comics. It is like Mobius meets The Sixth Gun. It is both a weird dystopian sci-fi story, but also has a lot of like Western elements. I say Western, I mean cowboy hat Westerns. So it's very much in that world. Long story short, there used to be two civilizations, two cities, and they of course went to war, and things happened. Now, one of those cities, which happens to be Centralia, is a toxic wasteland that is rumored to be full of gold in the middle, almost like an El Dorado situation. And you have these characters who are kind of living in this nomadic wasteland life in a nearby city, who are convinced that in order to save themselves and to save their culture and world, they need to go get this gold, right? They need to go grab it. But the problem is that the faction that lost the war still surrounds this place, right? They're still there and they're searching for revenge. And one of your main characters, and by the bad guys are called it's very on the nose, pun intended, the nasalless, because they're these guys and they have these big red noses and they masks and stuff. But one of your main characters, a guy named Lanka, was a general in the war, and he's the one who defeated them, and so they're out for blood. The other characters, you got some young folks. One is a reporter who's going out with them, and they just have to go on this big long adventure to get there, and they face all kinds of pitfalls and trials. They eventually get to the city, and the nasalists are basically trying to keep anybody and everybody out. They're murdering everything. The city is full of mutants and mutated people, that do all kinds of different things. There's flesh-eating birds everywhere. Some of these mutants run a bar where our characters seek refuge and learn some information. And ultimately, the story, it does have a good ending. I did appreciate that because it was set up to be a little bit bleak there for a little bit. But they're really not doing anything. They're not breaking any molds. They're not treading new ground with the story as far as a plot. Like it is it's a really interesting take on a lot of really classic tropes. To me, the art is the reason that you want to buy this hardcover. It is absolutely stunning. And even the pictures that I was able to pull out here really don't do it justice. Like the cartooning in this book is, it is that European bande dessinée style that just shifts so well from just heavily detailed landscapes to the great kind of cartooning that you get with comics where you show people, sometimes their face are minimalistic. The designs are just absolutely top notch for everything. There are really, really amazing jokes just in the art alone. They're not explained. You just have to catch them. About who these people are. And there's a character who's they allude to him being having an STD. He's a nozzle and he's got the drip, that kind of thing. So like I said, dystopian sci-fi Western based on a hellmouth in Pennsylvania. So go check it out. It is published by Living the Line Publishing Co.
Nice. All right, Steve, I'm going to ask you to put a graphic up of an ad that appeared in many comic books and magazines like Famous Monsters in the 70s. Could you please put that up first? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you collect back issues, you may have been familiar with this. Count Dante, the deadliest man alive. And he was the leader of the Black Dragon Fighting Society. And now you can learn the world's deadliest fighting secrets. They can be yours for free if you send in this coupon and you get some instructions. So this ad was very familiar to kids of the 70s. And as you can see there, Count Dante, almost like a quasi-fro going on there of unspecified ethnicity. And the real Count Dante was actually from a very prominent Chicago family. His father was a surgeon and his mother was a socialite. So the gentleman who was Count Dante claimed to have fought in Vietnam. There's absolutely no records of that happening under the gentleman's real name, which is the far less impressive John Timothy Keenan. But this is an image that I was familiar with for years and years. It wasn't until I think like 2004, 2005 that somebody did some digging about who the person was behind this. And now we have some speculative fiction in comic book form. I'm going to hold this up, and I think Steve has another graphic here. This is the first issue of Count Dante, the unauthorized but sort of true story of the deadliest man who ever lived. And the writer in this is J.C. Barber. And what J.C. Barber decided to do is he's going to take the myth and what's actually known, combine them together, and have the true, unauthorized, but sort of real story behind Count Dante and the Black Dragon Society that he created that basically went into Chicago's streets and took over and pushed out mobsters that have been there since the Capone in the 30s and did all these amazing things that he didn't do. So what happens in this particular story and where we start off is it is let me just make sure I had the year there. It's Chicago in 1985. Got that right. Yeah. I was about to say 1985, which is a very important year for Chicago if you're a football fan. And we begin with Sidney Brown, who is John Timothy Keenan's longtime friend and partner, being interviewed by a reporter at a local diner. And Brown recounts how during a POW mission, it was Brown's personal. He was basically Brown's personal savior, and he witnessed how Keenan eliminated enemy soldiers with his bare hands, basically an entire battalion of men, and then asked to become a student. Years later, Brown made his living as a hairdresser in Chicago, and they reconnect, and that's where we have Brown giving this dude a haircut, and somehow he doesn't look like he did before. He looks like royalty, like a king or a count. And that's where we leave off with the end of the first issue. This was a lot of fun. I love J.C. Barber's writing style because it's so tongue-in-cheek, yet it does cover some fairly serious issues like racism in the 70s and basically like charlatanism and how martial arts were so big in certain elements of 70s culture. It was really well done. The art is by this is Wes Weston is the gentleman's name. I wasn't as enamored of that. If you can think of an equivalent, maybe latter day Joe Staton, where Staton's work gets a little more cartoony. I think maybe something that was a little more in the lines of what you would see in Iron Fist and Master of Kung Fu comics of the time, like Paul Galassi type of art. I think that would have served the story a little better. But this was a really fun first issue, and I think I'm in for the haul. I believe it's going to be 6 issues again from our friends at Scout Comics. It is Count Dante, the unauthorized but sort of true story of the deadliest man who ever lived.
I mean, that sounds fascinating. I love those sort of like bizarre little things that you kind of take for granted when you look in the back of old comic books or, comic books that we read, growing up, and just sort of like, oh yeah, people did write in and send away for this and send these people money. Yeah. Who were these people? Yeah. But sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Sometimes it's just not as cool as the fiction could be. So,
and even more stranger at the time, most of those ads ran. Count Dante was already deceased. Crazy story. Crazy story.
Just wild.
All right, folks, we're going to start wrapping this episode up, and we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up. We have 2 segments. The first is sort of a show and tell segment, which we call Geek Gets, and it's a little different this time because usually myself and Caleb are the ones that have a Geek Get to show off. It seems Caleb doesn't, but the guy that normally doesn't have anything does. So, Steve, what is your Geek Get?
My Geek Get is another Kickstarter that I backed a while ago. Has just been published and received by me.
You say that about all of them.
I say all of them, but that's the thing.
That I backed a while ago.
backed a while ago, and I'm happy it took as long as it did to get to me because the quality is amazing. So it's Lincoln Green by Chris Fildes, who's been on the show before, talking about Fanny, Fanny Tuck to the Future, and Donna A. Black on art. And the art is fantastic, exquisite. It's a mostly silent comic book in hardcover. With these beautiful watercolor and ink drawings. Some of them are just absolutely gorgeous. Reminds me a lot of Dave McKean. Less of his found art, but there was some of that collage work in here as well. And of course, it came with some just beautiful prints of different different panels from the book, and also other artist interpretations of some of the work. But I absolutely loved it. It's very cool. It is a sort of mix of the Legend of Robin Hood and some other elements of British history, but it's definitely a very interesting artistic interpretation. So that's my Geek Get.
Nice. Well, my Geek Gets tie into what will be the meat of our next episode, which will be The Flash, that's coming out very soon. And I started picking up some Flash toys. So from Spin Master, I have a Dark Flash figure and a Batman figure. And then I got this set, which is an Amazon exclusive. This is a little weird. It's a Batwing, but Batman's not figures. So I had to get the Batman. But you'll see here there's Flash, and there's Supergirl, and there's Namek, which is one of General Zod's soldiers. There's another set which is figures, which has General Zod. It's the only way to get General Zod and Namek, so I'm hoping that doesn't say this, that doesn't keep. So there's a cheaper way of buying a General Zod figure and not getting 4 additional figures that you already have. So figure it out. But I do like the mass market figures. As nice as the McFarlane stuff is, and NECA, there is something to be said about sculpts that are a little janky, that are for the main kids consumption. So
and don't cost like $30 a piece.
Well, and I was going to say stuff that kids are actually going to get to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that their parents aren't going to say no, keep it in the box. We got to put it on display.
Yeah. I guess those kids still exist. So those are my Geek Gets. And again, next time around we'll be talking about The Flash. And very soon, unfortunately, Brother Caleb won't be joining us, but Steve and I will be together next week at Heroes Con, and we'll probably have a report. And I'm sure, Caleb, this is just a 1-year layoff for you.
I'm hoping so. Yeah, I want to get back. soon. Cons are not in the cards this year.
Yep. Hey, it happens.
It's all good. We'll see you next year.
We'll see you.
See you next year.
All right, we're going to wrap this show up. And again, when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, our last segment is something we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something. Well, you don't woof like that. You do something.
Woof.
Woof. That's how I've always done it. How do you woof, Steve? You
Woof.
don't. Yeah.
Woof. A lot. Especially written.
Anyway, but in the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. We do something similar here, where we signify something by woofing at it, that we think it's something that you, fair listener, or possibly viewer, may be interested in sampling. It might be a film, it might be a TV program, it might be a charitable initiative, anything under the sun. So, Steve, will you provide us with your woof of the week?
So my woof of the week is also another Kickstarter, but this one is actually not comic book related, not technically. It is more video game related. And I'm not talking about Diablo 4, which I've been playing way too much since it came out last week. But I am talking about the Witcher board game. That was something that I supported in Kickstarter 3 years ago, and it just delivered in the past couple of weeks. I got the deluxe box. It is the hugest, most beautiful little board game that I have seen in a while. I mean, all of the monsters fully molded figures for all the Witchers. Very complex, lots of things. I got the deluxe edition with all the extra expansions and all that stuff. So I got a Ciri, it's very cool. If you love The Witcher, here's a board game for you. I'm sure that it'll be available for mass market purchase at some point. Expect to drop some Gloomhaven money on that for any nerdy board gamers who know what that means. But it is gorgeous and it's fun. I can't wait to play with other people. But it is a 1-player game too, 1 to 5 players, which pretty cool.
The look on my face is I had promised somebody we would talk about their Kickstarter on our show, and it's blanking who it was. So I guess next time around we will. Sorry, Mr. X. All right, so let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
Yeah, my wolf of the week goes out to the most recent edition. I guess you should say it's becoming an annual event now. DC Pride is now. It is Pride Month, as you can tell. I'm wearing my shirt, which I also wear the other 11 months out of the year. But it is DC Pride. I love this anthology. It's usually my favorite anthology of the year. There's a great forward by Phil Jimenez. Grant Morrison and Hayden Sherman do a story in this. My favorite by far, I have not read all of them yet, but the majority of the ones I have are all fantastic. But my favorite, hands down so far, is called Anniversary by Josh Trujillo and Don Aguilo on the art. Lucas Catoni does the letters. And it is Midnight on Apollo. So, so it is I love that story, but there's a ton of good ones in here. The art's fantastic, amazing collection. It reminds me why I love anthologies, and they understood the assignment as they always do. Very, very touching, very, very heartfelt, very, very superhero is what they should be.
Nice. And it's my understanding that the Alan Scott story is leading into a mini series.
That's what I've heard. I haven't read the Alan Scott story yet. It's cool. But I've looked at it. It looks good. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
Okay. Steve. Yep.
Go
ahead.
There's also a Catman story in this.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have a pride shirt because Kirk sucked a lot of cock. So I guess this is a pride shirt. So what's your shirt?
I'm wearing a llama. I'm wearing Chewbacca llama.
I got a rock. Okay. All right. Steve, can you put up a graphic for my wolf of the week? So
I can certainly do that.
And there we go. And my wolf of the week goes to The Diplomat. Now I'm a little late on this. It actually premiered on April 20th on Netflix. It's an 8-episode series. It was created by Deborah Kahn, which stars Kerry Russell as the title character, who's Kate Weiler, the newly appointed U.S. ambassador to the U.K. In May, it was renewed for a second season. This has one of the absolute best cliffhangers you will ever see in any season of any television ever. And what transpires here is there's diplomatic tensions between the United States and Iran at the time of the events when the series starts. And concurrently with this, a British aircraft carrier is attacked on the Persian Gulf. However, it initially appears to be Iran, then it appears to be Russia. It's very unclear who the attack was from. And Kate Weiler, again, she's newly appointed to this position. What the U.S. ambassador to the UK usually does is go to parties and shakes hands. But she's a career diplomat. She's a career foreign service agent. Her husband was as well, and that provides some particular complications. This is a wonderfully complex and intelligent and nuanced series, and I cannot recommend it enough. And then, like I said, an ending, sometimes they say with those sell points, the end of this episode will change everything. The end of the 8th episode literally changes everything. And there's part of me that's hoping before the next season comes out next year that I might have a rewatch to kind of see if there were shadows that I should have picked up on. But Kerry Russell, I never watched Felicity, but I fell in love with her in The Americans. She's absolutely fantastic in this role. I can't recommend this enough, and I think I'm going to watch it even before the next season is ready, just because it was so damn good. But only 8 episodes, really, really really good series, The Diplomat on Netflix. Have any of you guys seen this yet?
No, it didn't really trigger any of my usual, must watch kind of.
That's why it took me
senses.
like 2 months to watch it. Absolutely. And I'm telling you should watch it. I'm telling you should watch it.
By the way, David reminded us it was his Kickstarter that he was that you were going to be talking about.
Oh, okay, Mr. X. All right, David, we'll give you a little bit more of a if he has a squib, we can read it before we march off. I'm very sorry about this. I was basically in the hospital last night. So
it's okay. So it's Requiem #1, Dare to Remember, Live to Forget, which is a sci-fi horror. And I do not have the graphic here, but it is coming soon. David, could you let us know when it's going to be starting? Do you have a date on that?
Very sorry about that, David. We'll do a proper talk up about it next week.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it next time. And because some of the images from that that he was able to share with us are absolutely awesome. Yes. Tuesday. So Tuesday, the 13th. Tuesday, the 13th.
Okay, so it'll still be in progress the next time we're together. So we'll do that properly. So
absolutely.
All right.
So
this one's in the bag. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so by downloading us through Apple Podcasts, listening to us through Stitcher Radio and many other podcatching platforms. And if you have a desire to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you joined us through Facebook Live, thank you. If you were watching us later through YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey, not Spider-Man.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And yes, Trump was indicted on 7 counts today.
And Pat Robbins dead.
If you're listening to the auto version, you'll hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Woof.